Good evening, and it's such a joy for us to be celebrating the World Philosophy Day. I think New Acropolis across the world celebrates this at this time of the year, and it's a pleasure to be here doing it at BIC. This is the second year that we're doing it here, and it's always wonderful, the collaboration with BIC, with all the support that we get, and also what this place enables for all of us, the conversations and the stimulation and the experience, I think, of just being here is very good. Thank you. Thank you, Lekha, Mr. Ravi, I don't think is here, but also Sandhya, who's been so wonderful helping us coordinate this evening. Thank you very much. Like she said, I'm Surekha, and for those of you who don't know about us, I'll just take a minute to introduce New Acropolis, and then we'll get started with the program itself. So we are an international volunteer-based non-profit organization, and have been working with the idea that philosophy needs to be practical and active. So it's not something that is an intellectual pursuit, but to see how it can provide us with answers to the questions that we all have about life and greater meaning for it. And our activities also promote, most of our activities are geared towards promoting values and how we can work to contribute to both individual development as well as how we can make the society a better place. And I think ultimately that's what philosophy does. The Bangalore chapter of New Acropolis has been around for 13 years. We're in Indiranagar. We also have a branch in Jayanagar. I think that's mainly what we'll start with. So just to tell you what the evening looks like, we'll start with, of course, we'll discuss the idea of symbols, what they are, how we can work with them, and if you actually need to we need some special skills to work with symbols, or if there's a way that we can find to connect and use this idea of symbols in our lives. So that's what we'll do. I'll just briefly introduce again the panel, and just so that you have some more context of what they bring you. I'll start with Prem Chandavarkar. He's the managing editor of C&T Architects, an award-winning, widely published architectural practice. He is the former executive director of Shrishti School of Art and Design and Technology in Bangalore. He is the academic advisor and guest faculty at Indian and International Colleges of Architecture. He was appointed as a member of the board of the Architecture, Culture, and Spirituality Forum in USA. And he's been with us 4 years in a row for this, for celebrating the World Philosophy Day. So we're really happy to have you with us again, Prem. This is Shaurya Singh. He's the founder of Unalom Project. He's basically been working in a lot of practical, immersive work. He's extensively studied philosophy, psychology, religion, and mysticism. He's founded the Unalom Project to make insights from the world of philosophy, ancient wisdom, and mystical traditions accessible to the modern individual. He speaks on existentialism, Sufism, Zen, and Indian philosophy. And he organizes lots of workshops and continues workshops in different fields, so that he'll talk about in a minute. We'll get to know more of you. Welcome, Shaurya. Anand Baskaran is the director of the South Bangalore branch of New Acropolis. He's passionate about philosophical education and has been actively working to bring change both the individual and to enable them to play a role in building a more harmonious society. Professionally, he's in the field of digital learning, and he sees himself as a practical philosopher first, though he's very excited and fascinated by the world of symbols, like he says. Thank you, Anand. And Padmini Ravi is a performer, very well known in the circles of Bangalore, and she's conducted and participated in seminars, workshops, performances, and tours around the world. She's also collaborated with theater and music groups to create performances within the form of Bharatanatyam, and she has performed more than 1,000 shows all around the world. So it's very interesting, and we're very honored to have her here again. She also works with theater, yoga, filmmaking, film dance, international styles of folk and classical movement to bring some freshness into the form that she works with. So, welcome. All right. So, just a little bit about the evening again. While we explore the idea of symbols and how we can use and understand them. So symbols by nature are open to interpretation. They have meaning, but the meaning very largely depends on how we see it, right? Because it's such a subjective interpretation as well, of what we see. Each of us can look at something and think of it either as a squiggly line, or it can be a source of great wisdom. And to see how we can make sense of the symbols that we see and come across, both man-made and the symbols in nature. So to start off with, I'll hand it over to Padmini, who's going to lead us through a little experience, and we'll continue the conversation after that.
Good evening, friends. I thank Acropolis for convening such a beautiful evening and having invited me to be a part of it. After 50 years of dancing and teaching the classical dance form Bharatanatyam, I just realized that I have very little to do with it. In the Silicon Valley, now the scientists are finding out that the information is not anymore saved on the silicon chips. It's being saved in rarefied, purified, extremely purified droplets of water. And to their surprise, they have found out that the information in each drop of water is so vast that it is even beyond the machine to read it. So they were wondering, where is it stored? And they found that it has been stored in the field. The field, which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, every one of us are a unique human being and a field of energy, and he operates it. The field is being referred to in the quantum physics, where we are talking about the magnetic and the energy fields, and then of course yoga. And dance traditionally has come from that philosophy. So we as dancers or dance teachers or any artist, if we think that we are doing something, we are completely mistaken, because we are only drawing in from the energy which is in the field. And at that moment, whatever energy is we want, information is we want, we can only give it through meditation. Today I will start with a very short, they wanted me to perform so that we will set a context. I'll be performing a very short piece created by Annamacharya. He is a saint poet. Now this term saint poet is because they wrote, not because of their prowess with a long language. They wrote because they experienced something. And Annamaya has experienced, he's a 15th century poet. He experienced Krishna. Now I took Krishna because he's the most relatable out of all the gods and goddesses that we have. Because an abstraction which has no antam, no beginning, no end, no form, no size, no shape, just an abstract energy. We see him as a child, we see him as a lover, and we see him as the ultimate. So he is experienced, and he says, love that God, love the Krishna, who is nothing but an ordinary cowherd. Bhavayami Gopala Balam in Ragam Yam and Kalyani set to Kanda Chaputalam. बालं गोपाल बालं गोपाल बालं गोपाल बालं विठ्ठल 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 पांडुरंग विठ्ठल 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 जय हरे विठ्ठल पांडुरंग विठ्ठल कृष्णानंदा मुरारे कृष्णानंदा मुरारे गोपाल बालं गोपाल बालं गोपाल बालं गोपाल बालं गोपाल 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 विठ्ठल विठ्ठल जय हरे विठ्ठल 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 विठ्ठल विठ्ठल
Thank you. I'm sure we all experienced something. It was so amazing, so graceful, wonderful. But I'd just like to continue and start the conversation with you, because when you performed, it touched something. But most of us, when we learn dance or learn a skill like this, it's about getting the technique right, about whether the posture is right, whether, I don't know, the mudras, I'm not very technical, but what is it that dance enables for you? What is the idea of, you said 50 years you've been working with dance, so why?
It's a good question. Why? Because you just get addicted to it. In life, everything in this world, current world, everything is transactional. Because you give something, you take something. But in dance, you neither give nor take. It's just you experience. Dance is, as you know, it's the fifth Veda, which means it's one of the Vedas, which means the philosophy of the Vedas are incorporated in dance. What are through words, through your body, through your mind, and through your emotions, you connect. All traditional performing arts in India are based on that one principle, that we connect to something which is beyond us, the ultimate. You can call it God, energy, light, just sheer intellect. A supreme intellect which controls the macro and the micro. How do we connect? What does it mean by connect? In the Vedanta philosophy, there are 4 Mahavakyas, are the more prominent sentences, which is Aham Brahmasmi from the Aitareya Upanishad. Prajnanam Brahmam, this consciousness is Brahmam. Tattvamasi, you are that. And Ayamatma Brahman, this self is Brahman. So throughout the Vedas, it has been repeated over and over and over again in the Upanishads, in the Puranas, in the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata. And it has been repeated, and of course in Bhagavad Gita, that all of us are connected to this one whole. We are all a part. And the science also is saying the Big Bang Theory. Before the Big Bang Theory, it was all, the whole creation was in the size of a small pea, and then we are all connected. Now, how do we feel that connect? And how is dance helping that connect? So most of us, when in our daily life, we are supposed to have 60,000 thoughts a day. And all of these thoughts are relating to 3 factors, that is our physicality of our body, the time, and the space. I mean, okay, I have to go home, I have to, drive from Domlo to Hennur, and it's 8:30 in the night, and then I'm hungry. So it's all related to these three. But once we go beyond these thoughts, then there are brief moments that we experience neither the body, nor the time, and nor the space. And sometimes, most of the times, the dancers are supposed to feel this, because to transcend the physicality, when we are doing, okay, is the light on my face? Oh my God, I'm too much in the front, too much to the back. Can they see me? They're looking at my back, so should I turn? All of these things are simultaneously going on. But there are moments when we go beyond all of that. And that is the pure experience. So dance is not about entertainment. It's not about showing. Of course, I do, and then you see. And if the dancer is good or bad, depending, you engage. Or you engage with your social media and Twitter, right? Otherwise, you don't engage with the artist because the artist is not connecting. If the artist connects, in those brief moments, it touches the audience. So dance has always been, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, self-realization, because nobody can learn through watching and experience and listening and watching. You can only learn through experience. So dance has been that factor which tells you, Tattvamasi, you are that. So in those brief moments, we feel that presence. We are so used to objectifying. If you are saying, you are that, we start looking, oh really, am I that? Where am I that? Where is that in me? No. It's not an objective lookout. It's a subjective experience. As they all philosophers will know that everything in life is a subjective experience. So that, if I eat a masala dosa and say, wow, I can't explain, because everybody will have the masala dosa experience, a different experience. It's a subjective experience. So dance is that which connects. And the drama of life, like the example is when there's so much of drama, horror, laughter, grief on the screen in a movie, the drama is in the movie, but the screen on which the movie is being projected, it doesn't touch the screen. The screen is thitam. It's permanent. It has no emotion. So as dancers, we also know, we do the Krishna, Draupadi, we flirt with the gopis, but then we know that we are not that, because we are in the transformation of being the character and becoming the character and being the character, and then after that, we are us. So we also learn that through dance that we are never in control of the stage as space. We may be absolutely prepared, but then we are completely out of control of the space, like we should be of life, because we are not in life, we are not in control of life. So dance is that which teaches you life. Dance is beyond Alaripu Jatiswaram and the technicality and this thing. So this is the experience that I have got after 50 years. Because till recently, I thought I was dancing, that aham, that me, I. It takes time and it takes in-depth experience to realize that you are not dancing. You are just a medium through which some other energy is dancing. And that is what dance teaches you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So dance obviously is like, so you so beautifully put it, such a wonderful symbol to be able to connect the physical with the metaphysical. It's a wonderful beginning to this evening. I'd like to turn around and ask Anand Baskaran, who's like a philosopher, and to see how philosophy, again, how philosophy is a symbol with the same idea of how do you bridge this gap between the physical and the metaphysical. If you can share your experience, how you work with it, just like she shared.
Yeah. Thanks, Surekha. I'll indeed do that. And as Padmini was dancing, it really struck me that I'm glad that there are other channels to connect to the invisible, because I certainly couldn't use that channel. As the people who know me here might say, it wouldn't be a very good idea. But anyway, on a more serious note, philosophy and how it can be a symbol. A symbol is essentially something which simultaneously exists in two planes of reality. One is it has its concrete existence, which you could say is its physical reality, but it doesn't stop there. It conveys a certain meaning. It's a bridge to something which is beyond the physical, and that is the other existence of it, the metaphysical. And in that sense, philosophy, the word itself is a symbol. Philosophy has its roots in two Greek words, philos and sophia. Philos means attraction or love or a yearning to come close to, and sophia is wisdom. Yes, and so philosophy is, it contains the meaning of an active process. Yes, and sophia, or wisdom, it's speaking about an inherent wisdom that's actually all around, just that it's obscured for us. And so the process of getting close to this is philosophy. And I think another word that is really worth pausing for a moment and connecting with is the sacred, because when, for me at least, symbols are a way to connect to the sacred. Yes, and the sacred sometimes can feel very distant to us. And this is one of the reasons we say that it's for her, it's for him, but not for me, or not for me right now. Yes, but I believe in reality the sacred is for everyone. Yes, and in order to approach this, I can bring one philosophical view that I learned through my own study. It was an encounter I had at New Acropolis. And a synthesis across different cultures speaks about the nature of reality. And there are different keys to this. I'll bring one particular one which speaks about three planes of reality. And this is three planes of reality for anything. Yes, anything that's created exists or relates to these three planes of reality. The first is the concrete, the physical, that which we can see and touch, and it's there's no doubting that it's there. The second plane of reality, is the psychological plane. And while you cannot quite grasp this, yes, or touch it, feel it, like you would the physical, there's also no doubting that this exists because it's such a part of our day-to-day experience. We all experience the emotional, the realm of the mental and thought and our feelings. Yes, this is the psychological plane of reality. And for the most part, if I would hit full stop here and carry on, it seems a fairly complete description of our human existence. But across the cultures of the ancient world, they certainly didn't stop here. They pointed out to another third plane of reality, which is the abstract, which is the invisible. And there is such a strong tendency, I believe, certainly nowadays, to say that if it's invisible, it's either not real or it's not important. But the view of the philosophies of the ancient cultures was quite the opposite. They said that this is the most essential part of our reality. And that's where I believe the sacred rests. And the beautiful part is that this part, although it's invisible, all the time it's all around. Yes, and even more accessible is the fact that it's also within us. It's one of the keys of life that there are no two sets of laws of nature, one that acts within the human being and one that acts in the world around. We are all of reality is subject to the same laws. And so it certainly follows that if the sacred, this invisible yet essential, is there around us, it's also there within us. And I believe this is the part through which we can connect to the sacred. And my experience as a philosopher has been that in order to connect to the sacred, one has to develop a love for it. One has to feel the need for it. And I think this is a need that in different ways, so many of us feel it across our lives. The differentiator is, do we heed it or not? Do we identify it or not? Do we allow ourselves to heed this or not? I can bring a particular symbol that really helps me work with this. This is a symbol from the civilization of ancient Egypt. You might have seen it even if the name doesn't bring the exact visualization to mind, because from what I've seen, it's one of the three most popular, even in pop culture, symbols from the Egyptian civilization. It's called the Ankh. It's often referred to as the key of life. And the Ankh is a simple symbol for the most part. It looks like it has one vertical dimension and one horizontal dimension. Yes, a step beyond, what is the Ankh representing? The horizontal represents our day-to-day reality. It's the world of the material in which we spend so much of our energy, so much of our expression is in this realm. But the Ankh is a reminder that there is this vertical dimension, and it's even represented as the vertical which is entering. The horizontal dimension is suffused with this vertical, and that is the spiritual dimension. Yes, this is the third plane of reality. And so the Ankh for me is a powerful symbol. It's a powerful symbol because it functions as a practical reminder. Yes, that reminder that it's well worth seeking the sacred. How does this manifest in my life? Because philosophy isn't meant to be. Yes, it isn't meant to be in the classroom, in the books, or it isn't even reserved for that moment of inspiration or a moment of connect, and then I carry on with my day-to-day life. No, it's meant to be brought into our day-to-day life. And for me, a simple way in which this manifests is that I create space. I consciously create space in my life for the sacred, for something which is beyond just the material, beyond just my day-to-day engagements, as important that they are. And like I spoke about the sacred, one of the tendencies is to say that, okay, to create space for the sacred means to neglect the material. But it's not saying that. The Ankh is again reminding us that it's to infuse what you do, whatever it is that you do, the things that you're doing in the material realm, but to connect it with meaning, connect it with a certain purpose, connect it with a certain value that it's building. And what comes in the way, yes, in my experience, is I think we are far too caught up with one part of reality, and we are in the illusion that it is all of our reality. And what is this part? It is the material. It's my physical reality that I need to take care of. It's my occupation, yes, and it's far too often we are in the mode of just surviving, just getting by fairly comfortably, yes, and in doing this, we forget this other dimension, the other dimension of the spiritual, yes, and I think this tendency for busyness, to be eternally busy, constantly doing, yes, constantly doing and building in only one aspect of reality is coming in the way of me connecting to that other. And so symbols like the Ankh and a practicalization of that, which means it makes me create space, is, I believe, a way in which we can really connect to the sacred. It can really open a window for us.
Thank you, Anand. Of course, philosophy's connection to metaphysics is but natural, and thank you for bringing it us so beautifully. Again, we'll move on to look at a different way again, different ways of connecting to the same. So probably, Prem, if we ask you again with your work with architecture, it's again very easy to get lost in the forms with how do you design something, and even to say, okay, a creative process, but I'm sure it enables something more. So if you could tell us about how you connect with this, it'll get us started.
Okay. Before I get to that, I'd like to briefly cover why we are driven to construct and use symbols. And this springs from a unique feature we humans have, a sophisticated capacity to be reflexive, empowering us to think about ourselves and the world we inhabit. And we consequently feel compelled to record those thoughts, first in language and then further through symbol systems that extend beyond our bodies. This leads to two innate traits within us. The first is the compulsion to decode and comprehend our universe through symbols, a capacity first defined with clarity in the mid-18th century by the Italian jurist and philosopher Giambattista Vico. He said, you can only fully understand something that you have made yourself. And therefore, humans cannot understand the world because they've not made it themselves. So therefore, we understand the world by remaking it in our own way through symbols. So we might develop the mandala or the Sri Yantra as a means of understanding our cosmos, both physical and divine. At an everyday level, we comprehend our culture through symbolic forms like dance, music, and painting. The second trait is that symbol systems empower a memory that ranges beyond our personal lifetimes, breeding the impulse to concretize and immortalize through symbols values we believe to be transcendental. We do this intuitively as parents, seeking to inculcate our children with exalted values, pointing them toward the art forms, idols, texts, and other symbols we want them to hold as significant. And we encapsulate value in artistic forms such as writing, art, dance, and architecture. I cite these two capacities to acknowledge the demand that an architect has an obligation to a sacred purpose of architecture, to offer a means of decoding the world we inhabit and an access to transcendental value. But I also recognize that my modes of working as an architect depend on using symbols. I produce designs using symbols like sketches, drawings, models, computer simulations, etc. I call them symbols because just as the word tree is a symbol representing a physical thing called a tree, while bearing no physical relationship, the word doesn't look like a tree. So similarly, the symbols deployed in the design process are meant to represent the physical and sensorial experience of inhabiting architectural space while holding no direct correspondence with it. To connect the two, I find a suggestion made by architectural critic and historian Joseph Rickworth extremely useful. Rickworth suggests that we think of design as an act of translation. We translate from the language of design process into the language of spatial experience. And then he makes a significant assertion. As we all know, translation is much more than deploying a dictionary. A consequence of this is the act of translation requires a far greater fluency in the language we are translating into than the language we are translating from. So if I'm translating a poem from English into Hindi, I need to know enough English to understand and appreciate the poem. But my fluency in Hindi has to be at the level of a masterful poet. Only then I can effectively translate. So coming back to architecture, what the greater fluency I need to acquire is the language of embodied experience. Realizing that a substantive part of what makes it valuable, beauty, joy, wonder, love, etc., are dimensions that are impossible to define, what we might consider abstract and invisible, but are unquestionably known as tangible reality when experienced. And the way to access this is through interrogating my own body as a site of these experiences, validating their value in the resonance I find in others. Sadly, this is not the way most architects operate, perhaps because we are drawn to the material because it's tangible in front of us. Many tend to remain trapped within the symbolic language of design process, which depends on a relatively static imagery seen through focused vision. Losing touch with how experience unfolds over time depends so much on peripheral vision, employs all of the senses, not just vision, and has an inborn quest for transcendence. So I think this suggests an approach to symbols in general. We must remember we symbolize in multiple languages. We must avoid fixing meaning within symbols, and our engagement with symbols must always be a discerning act of translation. As living embodied beings imbued with sacred value, we must never escape a personal responsibility to translate our symbols into what constitutes our inner core.
Thank you. Definitely, I think when you said that it's our responsibility to be able to connect to the inner core, encapsulates that so well. So I think, again, we'll move on to Shaurya, who'll probably want to share his thoughts on how you work with symbols. To understand it.
Yeah. Okay. First, I want to thank you and New Acropolis for this wonderful event. Primarily because philosophy is not to be somewhere in some book or some, like a class that you take on, but rather something that allows you to explore what is really going on. What is this person here sitting in my chair? Yeah, and what is life all about? What is the meaning of life? And since ancient times, man has sought this meaning, from the cave drawings to looking up at the night sky and looking at the constellations to give you some form of direction as to what's really going on. To now we have symbols like the email symbol or the notification symbol that brings about certain reactions within us. Yeah, and it's important for us to really examine where is it that we are looking for meaning. Yeah, so there is this one, of course. There's you look at a shell, and it's not just the shell. There is this aesthetic value to it, but then we want to explore deeper. So we see the spiral occurring. Yeah, and the spiral then can be interpreted as this journey of man within. Yeah, so philosophy is the primary question that all of us are seeking, whether we like it or not, is how do you end this disturbance that's happening? Yeah, whether we choose to end this disturbance temporarily through some kind of relief that we take on, or then we pursue, can it end fully? Is that really possible? Is there a point where I can transcend, like the word Padmini was using? Yeah, the transcendence from this experience of life, which is a certain way, which is given to us through language, through the templates, through what we call, the social conditioning, perhaps, the narrative, if we can call it that, the mainstream narrative. This is what's going on. Yeah. Now, from there, is it possible to transcend? And that's the question we are asking. And that's why open conversation like this is really incredible, and it's totally surreal right now for me, let me admit. Yeah, especially the way ma'am started this, that was so beautiful. Yeah. The spiral, okay, let's look at that. Okay, what is the spiral implying? The spiral is that journey which is taking you within, which is taking you beyond what we've kind of assumed to be life. What Anand was talking about. So there's the concrete reality, we all know this, yeah, transactional reality. Yeah, we are all transacting within this reality. And then there's this mental reality that's occurring, yeah, the psychological part of it. Where we kind of get stuck is, okay, we can relate with objects, that's fine, but the moment we start to assign meaning to these objects, there we are constructing this psychological reality. Yeah, so you can look at a bowl of fruits, yeah, but that's not a bowl of fruits, that's a snack. You see it from your subjective point of view. Yeah, or if you're allergic, that's danger. Yeah, so you're having a reaction which is happening at the psychological level. Now, what we have done is the psychological reality, which is like the symbols, yeah, is this layer on top of, superimposed on top of what is real. And we are dealing only with the symbols, yeah? So philosophy primarily is about unlayering, unpeeling all the layers that we have accumulated, the layers of meaning, yeah? Yes, I think that, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very interesting to see different ways that each of the panelists have used to sort of convey the same idea that of finding meaning through different forms, different ways of connections, but essentially that somewhere that we're still focusing on this idea that a symbol helps us connect to something beyond what the physical form is, right? So any symbol, it depends also, yes, definitely subjective, but how then can we sort of develop a sensitivity to see the deeper meaning? Is it possible for us to find a common meaning with the symbol? And maybe Prem, if I could start with you and see how you use symbols and how you work with them to connect to this meaning.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people ask me is they say, okay, you're in an artistic field and not everyone is an artist. So how?
Yeah, not all of us are.
And I start with disputing that claim. We are all artists, of varying ability perhaps, but artists none the same. And it's actually modern education that schools us out of this belief. And you can realize this by looking at how school education works, particularly the difference in the modes of kindergarten and primary school versus those at higher levels. In these earlier grades, the child is characterized by the impulse towards play and wonder, which are embodied modes of exploration, and has not yet acquired the ability to step out of these modes into abstract and disembodied forms of learning. At this stage, there is no choice but to make art and play as primary modes of learning. Children learn by drawing, making clay models, techniques of collage, which explore how things come together, enacting and storytelling. And all this demonstrates how innate the impulse to art is within us. By middle school and high school, we are schooled to lose faith in these modes, to think of them as childish and unsophisticated, to devalue art and privilege abstract reasoning. In effect, we are trained to distrust our own bodies and put faith in external references. To escape this trap, we must ask ourselves two questions. The first question is, what does art represent? The conventional belief that it represents the intentions of the artist is erroneous. What art offers, what all powerful symbol systems offer, is exactitude, a precision of expression that remains consistent. This stands in opposition to the chaotic and constant change in life. Art is a means of resisting the inherent decay, the entropy of life. This resistance allows us to use art and all symbols as an anchoring focal element of a contemplative effort to measure who we are and what the world is. The intentions of the artist, the claims of the art critic, the assertions of the priest of symbols are all irrelevant here. What matters is the way we personally use symbols to discover ourselves in the world, a process that must continue through our lives. Which brings us to the second question, what do our bodies represent? At one level, we are physical beings constituted by physical particles, all bound by the laws of physics. Effectively, we are physical particles configured to carry out certain biological functions. Yet, by some force that science is yet to explain and probably will never explain, these particles cohere into a consciousness that can dream, play, love, wonder, think, dance, create, and so much more. That is a miracle of who we are. And we shape this consciousness through the conversations we have with what is around us, with other people and with the symbols around us. When we accept a schooling that teaches us to distrust our bodies and turn to external references, we cut ourselves off from this primordial source of energy and creativity. But when we allow this consciousness free play to critically and rigorously engage with people and symbols around us, we not only escape the trap of narcissism, we leverage the freedom gifted to us by our birth to evolve towards what the philosopher Maurice Berman calls a participating consciousness, one that is entwined with the magic, agency, and joy of the world. A far cry from the ego-based consciousness we are schooled in that steps away from the world. So I would say have faith in yourself, in the innate artist within you. Don't believe anyone who tells you you're not an artist. Have faith in the consciousness you're blessed with by your birth, and persist in the conversations of discovery you can have with symbols and people and the world. And as you persist, this is not something you will discover through some rational, epiphany or something like that. This is a discovery through practice. Just as when we first play tennis, you can't get the ball to go in the direction you want, but you persist, in a tenacious practice, and suddenly, you find your body is responding, and there's memory not just in your brain, but in your muscles, and you're able to hit the ball, closer to the way you would like to. And that process, that persistent practice, that persistent conversation, that persistent participating consciousness is the joy of your evolution. The scholar of myth Joseph Campbell taught us that we make a mistake in thinking we seek the meaning of life, whereas what we truly seek is the rapture of being alive. And we feel this rapture when we learn how to find in symbols, in the world, in our companions, echoes of our innermost being.
Thank you. Wonderful. Maybe Padmini, I can ask you to sort of elaborate on this, just this idea of the practice and how we can actually connect, connect to the idea of being alive, of how you can stop the decay of life, like Prem said. How do you think it connects? How does it make sense? Through the forms that you use, of course.
Actually, this is my experience. I think what we should constantly do is question. Question what, not whether I'm teaching right, whether I'm dancing right, or whether I will be accepted, but what do we question? I question, like the macro is so perfect. The planets, they're moving in the same orbit, the same speed. The sun doesn't say, oh, today is Sunday, let me just, go a little slow. It just goes perfect. Our bodies are perfect. Perfect temperature, 98.7, and we are worried. Oh my God, I think I have some virus, COVID. So when everything outside and inside is so perfectly monitored by that, like Anand said, that invisible energy, we just need to surrender to it. And in dance, that's what it teaches. You surrender to that one energy which gives you the way to interpret. We have a few texts and millions of us are doing the same item, same composition, but we are all different. There are 7 notes in a raga, and many people, everybody, Hindustani and Carnatic, we all sing the same ragas, but our interpretations, the way we see it, the way we pattern it is very different. So something happens for the singer or the dancer to do what they are doing. And is it planned? If it is planned, the audience will know it. There is not a aha moment. But if it is unplanned, if it is coming from the inside, it touches the audience. So we have to be constantly in questioning, not about whether we are perfect in a transactional way, but are we in tune with that energy? The father of quantum physics, Max Planck, he dedicated his whole life to the research of matter. And he was given the Nobel Prize for that. And when he received the Nobel Prize, this is what he said, that there's nothing like matter. No matter exists except everything is held by this invisible force in its shape and size. So there is an unseen, unfathomable energy which we just have to tune in to. And as artists, at least I have realized it after many, many years of thinking that I am in control of my artistic process and I can do this and I can do that, only to realize that you become much more effective when you stop controlling and you just give it time and space and quietness of the mind, so that you are energized by that quietude, you are energized by that silence and not constantly thinking. So this is what I tell my students, that stop thinking so much. Just listen, just observe, just feel, so that you will realize what it is. It's very difficult. Like he said, nobody believes because something is which is invisible, which we can't touch and feel. How do we believe it? In today's world, we can't. But certain pursuits, like he said, everybody has an artist in you. Don't dumb it down. Because artists are not alien creatures, We also have a mathematical mind and scientific mind, and so do scientists and mathematicians have an artistic mind. So we are all a combination of all of it, except we just have to trigger the artist in us. By triggering the artist, it just means tune in and not tune off. That's what I think we have to just be in touch with tuning in. I think that's what will enable us to live properly.
I think that from both the ideas, the idea of practice, the consistency of the work, and the idea of finding the right lens to tune into these messages that we're getting that are there already in existence. Shaurya, to ask, how does this idea of symbols and how do you tune into that? How are you able to tune in? Any suggestions on that?
Okay. First I'd like to start with a story of this Zen master, called Ryokan. And he's sitting in his little hut and absorbed completely in the beautiful night sky and this beautiful glowing moon. So Ryokan is completely absorbed in that. And he's living in a tiny hut. It's not that he's very well off. But a thief comes in at that time. And noticing that Ryokan is completely absorbed, he starts to take away all the things, even the little possessions that this master had. At the end of it, as this thief is leaving, Ryokan says, "Stop. Yeah, you forgot this." And he hands him over the glass which he was drinking water in. Yeah. And this thief, ashamed, just somehow takes that and runs away. Ryokan then says, "I wish I could have given you this moon." Yeah. And this moon that's being referred to here is that lightness of being when you are beyond the narrative, the conditioning. We are all going through life in a certain way. It's almost like, somehow let me, finish this day. Somehow let me, get through this week. Weekend will come, then I'll be okay. This year, this. And finally, it's really about, I want to finish off life as fast as I can. Yeah, and that's very important what Mr. Prem was saying about this participation. When are you going to participate in life? It feels like it's almost always a rehearsal. It's like, what am I going to do tomorrow? How do I handle that? How do I talk with those people? What are the right things that I should say so that they, like me? Yeah. We're living life out in this rehearsal. So when you talk about philosophy, or for that matter, spirituality, it's not about getting away from the world. It's not about renouncing everything and saying, now I'll go and meditate for 40 years in a cave. It's really right now to be able to participate in life fully. Yeah? And what's really coming in the way? Yeah, in neuroscience, this is called the wandering mind, the default mode network, which is always creating a narrative of what's happening. So I'm not watching a sunset, I'm listening to the narrative of the sun setting. So my mind is going on, oh, look at the clouds, they're so beautiful. Oh, look, orange color there, that looks so nice. See, you forgot your phone, now you can't put this on Instagram.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah. And what is lost? I don't have that connection with what is actually happening. I'm just going through the narration of what's happening. Yeah. So right, we started the thing with Tattvamasi. So you are that already. That which you're seeking, you're already that. That bliss which you want is right here. That final point is the starting point. There's no gap. There's no space to be trodden. But why is it not visible then? Why is that not my experience in life? What's coming in the way? We need to really look at this because there are a lot of things that are draining energy away. Yeah, when you scroll, right, when you're going through that whole social media thing, what's going on? The mental energy is being drained. When we get caught up in the psychological aspect of reality, which is our relationships and all the drama and the conflict within them, what's happening? Mental energy is being drained. By the end of the day, you're tired. Yeah, you start to watch Netflix, even that series you can't watch fully, you're just like passing out. Yeah, because mental energy has got drained by all this. In today's chaotic world, it's all the more important that art and philosophy point us towards that transcendence which is possible. I conduct this workshop called Something Sufi, in which you go deeper into the poems of Rumi, the Sufi poet. And he says, you were born with wings. Why do you choose to crawl through life? Yeah, so it's a choice, right? We are, by not choosing that, we are choosing it to be this way. In today's chaotic world, it's important, like, Mr. Prem was pointing out, to reframe these symbols in a way. Yeah, to get them to mean something deeper for us, to get them to look at something deeper. Yeah, like the moon in the Ryokan story. Yeah, immediately you think of something beyond, because we all want that stuff which is there. We don't want that experience that's going on there. Yeah.
Thank you. Such a lovely audience. Anand, so I think I just want to get your perspective on when we talked about participation in life, how do you learn the language, how do we develop the wings, right? What's the approach to that?
Thanks, Surekha. Yeah. Again, for me, there's a big role that the why plays in this. And I think it's very beautiful what Shaurya brought, the quote from Rumi that says that you were born with wings. And then I think many of us, we forget that. So we need something that will remind us not only that we have these wings, but we find a powerful enough force that tells us find a way to activate it, find a way to flap these wings, find a way to fly. Yes, and I connect this to the notion that many of us have to aspects like working with symbols, to aspects like inspiration, which we put it in that bucket that we create in our lives, which is usually in one corner. Yes, and it's that bucket into which we put all those things that we say are good to have, but I can get by without it. Wonderful if I can connect to it, but if I can't, I'll carry on with life. And I'd like to propose here that we flip this. I'd like to propose that inspiration, connecting with meaning, are not good to haves, they are a human necessity. Because without that, we are living lives as, I think, to put it a bit bluntly, we are living lives as sophisticated and slightly intelligent animals. Yes, which is unfortunate because the destiny and the ability of the human being is far different from this. Yes, our destiny is indeed, it's somewhere to find a way towards the sky. Yes, and it has to start with finding our own way to take it out of that bucket and say, I need this every day. It's not for that someday, and it's not for when I become like that person, or when I'm cleared enough of my responsibilities that I now have the time, the energy, the mind space to pick that up, but it is for my everyday. And this connects to an idea from symbolism, which is very powerful. It's that the human being is a symbol himself. Man is a symbol of the infinite. Man is the human being is pretty much the only form of life that we see around us. When we see other life forms, whether it be in the kingdom of minerals, plants, animals, it is the human being who can work with the abstract. It is the human being who can develop and express the abilities like imagination, like intuition. And this enables A, it enables B. It gives man a role to build this bridge between the worlds. I see the philosopher, the artist, as the one who is uniting worlds, who is uniting the world of the concrete, the world of the mundane, with the world of the meaningful, the world of life. Yes, life in its most essential form. And it was very beautiful when I heard Prem speak about Joseph Campbell and the echo of the innermost being. I think there's a certain value also to the place that we see for ourselves. On one hand, there is a lot of belittling of the human being's place, of my place. Yes, when I look at myself as an individual in this world, I say I'm small and the world is large. Yes, but on the other hand, there is a certain hubris that comes into this that has made the predominant view of the role of the human being what we call anthropocentric. It means that we put man in the center and everything else revolves around that. This is our notion of the world. Yes, it would explain very well our tendency to overexploit the natural resources, because what is the value of them if not to serve man? This is the approach with which we see the world, whereas a more healthy view comes from the ancient world, and it's quite universal. It's what we call heliocentric. Helios represents the sun, yes, and the sun is a representation of nature. Yes, nature is at the center, and man plays a role in this entire ecosystem which is governed by nature. And in that sense, if we can start connecting to this symbol of man as having a role in the scheme of nature, in the larger scheme of things, in the stream of life, I think it will push us to connect with a sense of destiny. A sense of destiny not only at a personal level, but a sense of collective destiny. As humanity, as a human being, what is the role I have not only to survive life, yes, not only to get by, but to truly fulfill the meaning of being human. And yeah, in doing this, I think to practicalize it again, I find that another place where the symbols appear and can be practicalized strongly is in myth. and in mythology. These are present across cultures, and as opposed to the place that I feel unfortunately relegated them to, which is either as entertainment or as something which is for kids to keep them engaged, or at most there will be a moral of the story that they can take from that. As opposed to that, myths play a role of being educational tools. They are tools for the education of the human being throughout life. And I can relate to one aspect, a repeating myth, which is the myth of the hero. The hero's myth, which repeats itself across different cultures. But before that, a quick pause to check with Surekha. Do I have time to narrate a myth? Or?
Really quickly, no, I think we'll let go of them.
Okay, so I won't. Sure. In that case, I won't narrate a myth itself, but I will emphasize on the importance of connecting to the role of the human being, and especially the heroic human being. This sense of heroism in our life, it's not the hero who comes and saves the world for everybody else. Yes, not to see ourselves as the one who is swooping in to save the day, not to wait for someone else to come and set things right in our lives, but to take on this role of the human being who has a role to connect between these worlds. And the world that's very prevalent for us is the default. It's the default of our day-to-day, yes, our obligations, so to say. And the world that we need to activate a connection to more is the world of the sublime. Yes, and this is where you have the Greek Acropolis, yes, which means the higher city, or the ancient Egyptian Thebes, which is one of the spiritual centers, or the Tibetan Shangri-La. And these tend to be seen as pilgrimage sites, yes, that these are places that we go to connect to a temple or a holy site, but it's most powerful when it's seen as a symbol of a place within us, as a state of consciousness. It's that higher city within myself. It's that higher mode of being where I'm connected to the sublime. And this is what I wanted to bring.
Thank you. I wish we had time for the myth maybe in the end. But I think, again, the idea of bridging, of using symbols or different symbols as a bridge. Maybe if we can ask Prem to talk about how you work with the idea of how can any of us connect to, and be a bridge? How do we make this connection between life as we are living in the world of matter and the metaphysical?
First of all, I would suggest you don't look at this schism between the ideal and the practical, between the physical and the metaphysical. I think they create false dichotomies that steer us towards unnecessary compromise. Mm-hmm. I would start with the advice to be alert to two traps, and the two are closely intertwined. The first trap is a politics of power, whose orthodoxy will tell you that meaning is fixed in the purity of a certain history or geography, a certain interpretation of divinity, a certain set of symbols. And the only potential for a fulfilling life lies in abiding by this fixed meaning, and any entity that contradicts it is to be feared and expelled from your life. The second trap is an academic convention that schools you toward hanging your hat on an abstraction of external references, and consequently teaches you to distrust the wonder of your own presence. These two traps school you to discard the innate impulse you had as a child to wonder and play as means of exploring the unknown, claiming this is a naivety you must discard, urging you to seek false refuges of certainty whose borders you are hesitant to cross. Now, if you can be alert enough to escape these two traps, you will find the challenge is not formidable, for all you must do is unleash an inner ability present since your birth. Your consciousness, the freedom, autonomy, and agency it carries, and your innate impulse to validate and vitalize it by seeking in the symbols and people around you the image of your innermost being. This ongoing and intimate equation with symbols will allow you to confidently navigate the unknown without fear. For the grounding of your inner being within the world gives you that ability. You become like the tribal who can wander into an unknown part of a deep forest, yet feel confident of finding a way back because of an acquired ability to read the signs. The stars, the sun, the wind, the sounds, the smells of the forest, and more. And the symbols you enfold into your life are a resource of additional guides that can be used. Just like in the children's tale of Hansel and Gretel, who drop a trail of pebbles when they are led into a forest to be abandoned and use this trail to find their way home. As your ability to read the signs enhances over time, as your consciousness participates further in the world, it expands to apprehend an inherently generous world that keeps offering new possibilities. You will discover new symbols, new readings within the same symbols, new dimension of yourself, new worlds. The means of accessing this is through what Indian tradition calls sadhana, which is a rigorous, repetitive, ego-transcending daily practice. And this is captured by an interview given by the musician Pushkar Lele, who talks about reaching a plateau after 15 years and he wasn't able to transcend it. So he did what many musicians do, he changed his guru. And he started training under Vijay Sardeshmukh. And he thought the new guru will give him the keys to this higher realm. But the guru pushed him back to basics. He said, for the next 6 months, for 8 hours a day, you will sing just one note, sa. So Lele found this rather pedantic, but in India you have to do what the guru tells you, so he did it. And he said one day he sang the sa the guru was listening, trying to hear, wanting to hear, and his guru smiled. And he said he realized till then he had never hit the exact center of a note before. And if you trace the lineage of this epiphany, Lele's guru was Sardeshmukh, Vijay Sardeshmukh guru was Kumar Gandharva. And one of Kumar Gandharva's gurus early in his career, unusually for that time, was a woman, Anjani Bai Malpekar. And in one of Kumar Gandharva's interviews, he talks about something Anjani Bai taught him and said, you start with a single note and your sadhana will eventually reveal to you an entire octave within that note. And it's actually these subtleties that differentiate the good from the great. I mean, you take two professionally trained musicians, one is good, one is truly great. The good cannot be faulted by being besur or unfaithful to the composition, but it's actually in these subtle differences that the great breaks into a completely different realm. The spirit of such a world, imbued with a deep well of meaning that never runs dry if you can devote your sadhana to it, is eloquently conveyed in a prose passage from the Austrian poet Rainer Maria Rilke. He talks of memories here, but the same argument can be applied to symbols. Rilke writes, "And yet it is not enough to have memories. You must be able to forget them when they are many, and you must have the immense patience to wait until they return. For the memories themselves are not important. Only when they have changed into our very blood, into glance and gesture, and are nameless, no longer to be distinguished from ourselves, only then can it happen that in some very rare hour, the first word of a poem arises in their midst and goes forth from them."
I see you nodding, so Padmini, I think it's also very closely related to yours. So how important is sadhana for any of us? To be able to use sadhana as a means to connect and practice.
Sadhana is the only way that you can connect. It's not about hours of practice. It's not just the physical practice. But as I keep saying, life is actually very simple, because you have to just tame your mind, because there is a voice, inner voice, that is always there, which we always ignore, because we believe the mind says it's not right. So we quieten the mind and we spring into silence. And that is the sadhana which actually, like Prem said, the differentiator between the good and the great. We have all grown up hearing Pandit Jasraj and then watching Briju Maharaj or Kelu Babu, and those were the greats. And the generations down, we cannot fault their technique, but what is it that they had that one note, that one tune, that one moment where a Balamurli Krishna or an Emma Samma had that. So that is, of course, there was technical and physical sadhana, but they were also very, very, very meditative. And I think that's how you tune into yourself, and then you tune into life. And that is the practice that I find it very difficult to do, because I make it an effort. I can dance for 2 hours, do yoga for 2 hours. That's very easy. Just to tune in and switch off the rest of the world and then seek that inspiration within is the most difficult part. And if you bring that part into your sadhana, I think everybody will be great in our own realm, not just an artist. I think that's what we should try, at least in our life.
Thank you. I'll turn to you, Shaurya. How do you, so is it attention? Is it bringing consciousness? Is it the consistency or the constancy of work with the awareness?
Sure.
What
Sure,
will
okay.
help?
What I'll do is with the humility of not, trying to make it over simple, but primarily what's going on is that I need this inner peace which I'm seeking from various things. So the mind is constantly jumping outside. Will this give me happiness? No, not happening. Will this? So, keep scrolling, swipe. That's what the mind is constantly doing. Jumping somewhere out there to find this happiness. Yeah. But what if that happiness or that state which you're seeking is available to you within? Okay, that's the presumption we have to make. At least find out for ourselves if it's there or not. Yeah, at least go all the way and find out if it's there or not. Importantly, what all the panelists have been saying, again, without trying to oversimplify, is take full responsibility for what's going on. Yeah, what are these symbols in my life? What do they mean to me? How are they impacting me? What is this, the story of myself that I tell myself? Yeah, and we've been speaking about transcending the self, going beyond the ego. What does that really mean? Because if you really look at it, those points in your life when you felt really, at a point of contentment, at a point of bliss, at a point of pure happiness, was those moments when you went beyond yourself for some reason or the other, whether you're standing in front of mountains or whatever. That's what happened. You went beyond yourself in some way. So that's what you're seeking. Okay, a quick story. The Zen master Zuje, okay, and Zuje would answer all questions that would come to him. So people would ask him, what is that nirvana? What is that state of nirvana? What is Zen? And he would just, this was the answer to everything. Yeah, everyone who came to him was shocked, like, what is this? And it would mean different things, obviously, to everyone. One day, Zuje is not there, okay, and people come to the temple and say, what is enlightenment? What is nirvana? So one student steps in and says this. Unfortunately for him, Zuje spots him, says, come here, and he cuts off his finger. Yeah? And he says, now come back to me. He says, now tell me, what is enlightenment? What is that final state? This boy, out of habit, raises his finger again, but there's no finger there. Yeah? That finger represents this identity, me. Yeah? Me is a symbol for all this mental activity, the memories, the dreams, ambitions, fears, past, future, all that stuff together, ever changing. It's not it's not the same. Yesterday it was not the same. 5 years ago it was not the same. The self is constantly changing, but like a placeholder, I said, all this stuff together is me. Yeah. So since the question is about connecting, okay, let's do a little thought experiment. Okay, this is something we can do right here. We don't have to, it doesn't require any, any fancy things to do. It's a simple thought experiment. It comes from the Mandukya Upanishad. Okay, and primarily what the Mandukya Upanishad is talking about is this absolute reality which we want to get to somehow, right? The symbol again that's being used there is the symbol of Om. Okay, Om most of us are familiar with, but this kind of a breakdown of Om is there in Mandukya Upanishad. Again, I won't go into it deeply. Again, I conduct a workshop called Blissfulness Meditation, in which we go deep into what the Mandukya Upanishad is saying. Yeah, I'm going to use a thought experiment right now, so just stay with me. Okay, imagine that you're having a dream. Yeah, and in this dream, you're a spy, like a Hollywood film. You're a spy. Yeah, you're good looking, you're strong, you're smart, you've got crazy skills as well, right? So you know karate and scuba diving and bungee jumping and all those skills, you have all that, yeah? You're carrying this briefcase and you're being chased. And you find yourself at the edge of the building and you're going to jump off, yeah, because you're being chased and all these, the villains are after you, yeah? And you jump off that building and suddenly discover that you're not falling, you're just, and at that moment you wake up, right? Now this character which you were in the dream, yeah, and the world that he occupied, he or she, is not you. Yes? Not the same dreams and ambitions, not the same experiences, not the same past, not the same skills, not the same physical appearance either. But you say, I had that dream. So what is common between you with all this stuff, this reality, and that character with that stuff and that reality? What is that which is common between the two? And that the Mandukya Upanishad is saying is the true you, the true self, which is not subject to change, which is not subject to the narrative, which is not subject to the story that you tell yourself about yourself. It's beyond that. Yeah, and since it's fundamental, it's available all the time. Right now, right here. In fact, that's the only thing that's there. The rest are meanings and symbols and layers and layers and layers that we build upon that. And then get caught up in it. Yes, okay.
Thank you. I hope you're back from your dream. Anand, if you can take us through the myth, through another story, to tell us again how we can use myth essentially again to connect. So if even, you could share the story that you wanted to as well.
Sure, thanks. And I think I'll build up towards that. And because the overall theme we are looking at now is really practicalizing the work with symbol, how we can enable them to help us connect. And I think it's a good place to start with gaining clarity about where to direct my focus. Yes, the ancient Egyptians, they worked a lot with symbolism, and for them a synthesis of all symbols was viewed in a particular form, that every symbol is viewed in the form of, or the symbol plays a role which can be visualized as two cupped hands which are outstretched for anyone who's passing by. So what this might look like is this. And in those cup hands is something which you don't see, yes, but that is the essential. There is something that it wishes to convey to you. And I think the beauty of this is that the symbol is always there, always ready, and always giving. Much like what Shaurya said now, it's always there and available. And hence, our work is contrary to what we might think, that we need to craft something outside there, that we need to work with this symbol which is out there. Our real work is in our own preparedness. When we pass by these cup hands, what really makes the difference between whether it impacts me, whether it changes something in me or not, is not what's out there, but what's in here. And there's a need to tune this inner world, which is what I think it all comes down to. We need to work with our inner world. I'll bring an analogy that I came across through photography. Yes, it's a French photographer called Cartier-Bresson who gained popularity at some point for his photographs, and especially the idea of the decisive moment. Yes, he has, and one of his photographs became very popular. It's showing a shot through a hole in a fence of this boy or a young man who is jumping across a puddle of water. Yes, and reporters queued up to ask him about this. And here he is in this one interview where the reporter says, "Oh, it's such a perfect shot that one moment, a moment before, and it wouldn't have been as great a moment after. And it wouldn't have been quite as alluring as this. How do you do it? How do you capture this perfect moment?" Yes, and he's expecting some deep, profound answer. And Cartier-Bresson tells him, "Oh, it's about luck. I got lucky." And the reporter is feeling a bit let down. I'm here to give a big story here. What will my readers say if I'm quoting Cartier-Bresson saying he just got lucky? So he says, "No, there must be more." Yes, and he says, "Yes, it's always about luck, but you have to learn to be lucky." Yes, you have to prepare yourself. You have to orient yourself to be ready to be lucky, which means to capture that moment. And this to me connects to another symbol. Perhaps instead of a myth, Surekha, I'll bring another symbol which comes from ancient Greece, but it's not exclusively in that culture. It's the symbol of the muses. You might have come across this. It's also part of our English language. The muse is the source of inspiration. Yes, we look for this. And the muses in the myth are visualized as these 9, in most cases, 9 young women, yes, who are channeling different ways to express inspiration, to express the creative energy. And there's a saying, to be touched by the muse or to be kissed by the muse means that you as an artist have a connect to the inspiration that the muse brings. And who does the muse touch? Who does the muse kiss? Yes, it all depends on the one who is ready and orienting himself or herself in service of the muses. And it comes down to this inner preparation of being ready, to being ready when the muse comes. Because it could well happen that the muse came and she knocked at your door, but you were too busy chasing that deadline, and then she went away. Yes. So I'll dive now a bit into this inner work that we can do, and it's a key, again, a synthesis from across different culture, which speaks about creation. And whether it's the creation of the universe or the creation of a personal project in my life, in my work, or the building of a relationship, it all follows the principles of a key of 3. It's one key, and there are 3 creative energies. The first is will, the second is love, and the third is intelligence or intelligent form. Let's look at how we can apply these with regard to connecting, making these symbols work, yes, allowing them to help us connect. Will is quite simply the question of why. It is the need that I feel. Prem, you quoted Rilke now, and one of the things that stayed with me from last year's, where you were also on the panel, is you were I think quoting Rilke in a letter to a young aspiring poet who asked him, how should I write? Yes, and the advice that Rilke gives him, I'm paraphrasing of course, is he says, before you ask how I should write, you should ask yourself, should I write? Yes, and I think this was powerful for me because it's asking the question, is this important for me? Yeah? Many times we skip this and we say, okay, it seems fashionable. Okay, it seems cool. Okay, it seems like there is a quick fix solution to the problems of my life over there. These don't hold water. It has to be a deeper human need. This is the first creative energy. And don't look for something which you have pre-programmed, that at some point I will have some sign which will tell me go approach symbols. Yes? It will express itself most likely as I seem to have everything that I need in order to be happy, but something is missing. That will push you to seek something out. For some of us, it's an event which happens in our life which shakes us up to saying, whoa, all that I've been building, it seems like there's something more, or it seems like this is so vulnerable, it's so fragile, and it pushes you to seek something else. For others, it's a quest to make a difference around us. In whatever way this need arises, it's well worth heeding that. This is the first creative energy. The second is love. It is the energy of nurture. It is, if will kindles the flame, love is the protection of this flame. It's the investment of your time, of your energy. It's to come close. It's to give space. It's all that the soil does or the womb does. It nurtures. It nurtures this thing which is important for you to create. So this is the second aspect, the second creative energy. And the third, which we can apply in our lives, which is a part of shaping our inner world, is finding the right forms. Finding the right forms which will do justice to that which I want to create, to that which I have this impulse to support the creation of. And there are, I believe, two aspects to this. When we speak about symbols, when we speak about a way to connect to the invisible, to connect to something which is essential, it is a process. It's not a one-time thing. It is a sustained process. And so I believe it's very important to find a form that works for you. For me, it has been practical philosophy. This has been a form which, and it isn't one talk or two, it's a consistent relationship with it. It's the regular connect through the classes, it's the regular activities through the community, it's the regular practice in the most important arena of all, which is our own lives, which is our workplace, which is our relationships, which is our personal projects. This constancy, yes, so philosophy is a form which has worked for me, and for others it might be other forms, but I believe that it requires a form that can offer itself as a path. I believe this path is important, otherwise it becomes a flash in the pan, and it's not going to sustain. And the other aspect to this third creative energy is many times we are waiting and saying, okay, it's going to be something extraordinary, this thing which will come there. Yes, and a symbol again from ancient Egypt comes to my mind. It's speaking about this insect, which is called the scarab or the dung beetle. Yes, it's this little insect which, it's called the dung beetle because it spends the majority of its life rolling bits of dung into balls. Yes, if you watch any a documentary about it, this is a very funny looking sight that it has. This dung beetle was elevated to the position of a god in ancient Egypt. It's representing the energy, and it's represented like this, that here is Khepri. Khepri is this dung beetle, this scarab, who spends all of his or her life amidst the mud, rolling dung, and it doesn't realize that it has wings until one day its wings open up, and they are these beautiful, glorious, golden, reflecting the light of the sun wings, and it takes flight. And this is, for me, an inspiring symbol of the work we need to do. It is the everyday work. It is the next challenge. Very often our perspective is that there is life and there is my path and challenges are outside of this plan. No, that is the plan for you to engage with that. This is the work of Kefri, to engage with what comes in front of you. So this is the third energy. So these three, I think, can come together to help us shape our inner preparedness, and then this encounter will happen. The encounter with the symbols which are in reality all around us.
Thank you, Anand. Okay, I think to sum up at least the last bit of it, it seems like we're talking about really finding very practical keys of how we can work with symbols, how it's really a part of us, whether it's created, man-made symbols, symbols in nature, symbols of ourselves as part of this, whether we're talking about being alive, using sadhana, using practice, to remember who we are, but most importantly, to work with this, work on the path, whatever the path is, and to be consistent with it. I think before, I would like to open it up to questions, otherwise we'll run out of time. So you can probably have some mics that we have if anybody has questions. You can just raise your hand and where? Sorry, I think. Yeah. Okay, I think we don't have lights there. It's not very visible, but. Do we need a mic? Maybe if you can just introduce yourself, and also if there's one particular person you'd like to address your question to, you can just let us know.
Yeah, hi. I'm Suchitra, I'm an architect. I'm a little confused because I came here to listen to a conversation about symbols and the keys to meaning. And I think instead, I seem to be, at least this is my personal feeling, is that it's come to a kind of a modern spiritual pravachan kind of situation. There's so much that I would have appreciated, maybe, if there was a larger focus on the topic itself. For example, Om itself as a very powerful symbol, almost like it's like a, it's just like a primer. It's a symbol with such layers of meaning. Tattooing, which has come back with such a great, so many people are putting some symbols on their body. What is it that they want to express through that? Emojis, and even looking at the fact that maybe a lot of the Aboriginal or so-called or the older cultures had powerful symbols. And do we create those kind of symbols? Political meaning of something like a lotus, what has happened to it when you look at it? I was kind of hoping that these would be the ideas that one would get from a panel which is quite varied in their expertise. So I just wanted to know if I'd like a response from anybody on the panel who would like to respond.
Would like to share? Sure.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you firstly for that question. When we talk of Om, like you mentioned, so Om goes back to the Mandukya Upanishad, where A, U and Ma are the three states of consciousness. So the moment we take on these symbols and their meanings, right, the meaning could be very different for someone who's just seeing Om on a flag, right? It's not meaning absolute truth or any such thing. So the meanings are assigned by us, so we project meaning onto the world. Which is why we say, do I recognize this symbol? So I need to know already, that's why I recognize it. But now, when we look at these various cultures that you're talking about, a lot of stuff which was meant to bring you back to who you are, completely in touch with that self which is not bound in disturbance. Yeah, that is lost. So today we just go through, a ritual, or you might paint a mandala, but you don't know what it's about, what it's really saying. Where does it get you to? So I think, again, not to speak for everyone, but the essence of that symbol and how we can reframe it to make it something important for me and bring about some shift here, because the only thing that matters is the person sitting in your chair. Yeah, so what is it that I'm going to use as a story, as a cue, as, in Zen, the masters would even give, the students a knock, right? Whatever it takes to just snap out of this. Yeah, the matrix. To snap out of it and see what's really going on. So whatever it takes. And I think that's been our aim. Through, whether it's art, through philosophy, through thought experiments, through symbols. Yeah.
Prem.
Since you're an architect, let me offer a line from architecture. Louis Kahn said, great architecture starts with the immeasurable, goes through measurable means while it is being designed, but in the end must present the immeasurable. And I think, there's a paradox here because it's asking you to measure the immeasurable, which you can't really do. And the way of accessing it is to know that what is immeasurable is something you're hard-pressed to define, but you know it as tangible reality when you experience it. I mentioned love, joy, beauty, wonder. So we can go through a sort of very technical explanation of symbols, but that is trying to stay within the realm of the measurable. And I think the tone everyone on this panel took is that is actually not a sufficient understanding. You have to access the immeasurable, and that can only be done by establishing the connection between the symbol itself and what happens within you. So if I take Om, I can, as the Upanishads, Mandukya Upanishads teachers, I can go into the details of A, U, Ma, but that actually distracts me when I'm chanting Om. The power of it comes only when I feel the vibration in my body of what the mantra offers me. So I think that was basically the message here, that to talk about a history of symbols or is getting trapped in the wrong level, because then we'll try to fix meaning in the symbol. The symbol is meaningful only when it comes and animates our inner being. Absolutely.
Of course. It's so subjective. All symbols are. Anyone else? Next question. This person there.
Sanjeev Sikka, I'm an engineer. So what that lady mentioned was a bit correct. I learned a lot today. Absolutely brilliant. Each of you have so much to say and so much to teach. But the problem is we are sitting watching a symbol of the screen which you are not watching. And that's the language of symbols, keys to meaning. So whole evening I've been concentrating on the different words to connect with each of you. Is it symbols? Is it language? Is it keys? Is it meaning? Is it the Sufi dancer? Is it the spiral? Is it the pyramid? And actually it's been helpful because all of it made some sense. So there's no question, it's only a comment. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Diksha, and I think I would pass away from this moment of defining myself as an engineer or something. And just coming to the question, so it comes from Anand, but I would see whoever can answer and what different views you guys would have. So you spoke about 3 creative energies, and the third one was where you said that um, without the path, it is very difficult for the sadhana or the first two, for even to sustain in a long manner. Now, for some of us, we think that the path has unfolded. For some of us, people think that the path has unfolded. Or maybe we just think that, or we don't know what's ahead. For some who are really trying to find a path or still discovering it, what would be your ways of connecting with it? Do we say that it's going to unfold at its own time, or it's actually unfolding? And because you spoke of, because coming to the practicality of it without again getting trapped into the seeking and searching of a path, which itself is again a trap. We all are in a way, I feel. So what could be the other ways other than sadhana, if you would say something? I sometimes feel that connecting to the child, how we were born, may help. But I would also like to see what the panel thinks about it, or what could be the ways, if any. Thank you.
Yeah, I did mention when I spoke that connecting to the child is essential. You know? Like Picasso's, one of his famous lines is, "It took me many years to learn how to draw like a child." You know, so, and I think what the child is willing to do is just open their eyes in wonder. And I think it's that openness that is really crucial. And sadhana is a means of pursuing that openness, so it is crucial. And without that openness, we might not see what is in front of you. But if you have that openness, all kinds of teachers will appear. The teacher might be a guru, the teacher might be a flower, it doesn't matter. And I think there's a wonderful saying I read recently. It said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. When the student is truly ready, the teacher disappears.
Yeah, sure.
And I also think, because you started off saying I don't like to identify myself as an engineer or a this or a that, and you may be at a point where you don't know which is the path, and you're looking for the path to emerge. And I mean, this is my personal experience, and I've been dancing from when I was 9 years old, and I thought my path was dance, and I've always run away from my path, only to be steered back. So I read somewhere saying that the life is not which is happening to you, it's happening for you. So I suppose you just have to be, and it will emerge when you tune in, because now you're thinking, what is it? You're objectifying that which may draw you towards a certain path. But I think if you tune in, it will appear. I mean, this is my opinion.
Thank you.
Just one
See
line.
if there's anyone.
Okay.
See if there's anyone else.
So this question, I'm Ranibi Lepcha, and this question is to Prem sir. Throughout the session, I think we, the panelists, spoke about your personal journey about symbols, your personal understanding of it. But oftentimes, it's not just for groups of people, but entire civilizations, symbols are a language. They transcend through personal experience, and they resonate collectively. So, Sir spoke about how you shouldn't let certain prescription restrict you in the understanding of symbols or of particular things. So, how exactly do you navigate that? Because because certain collective symbols is prescribed for you, and they work for certain people. So, should we reject that? Should we explore more, or should we set out to find something completely new?
I think we make a mistake when we start believing that the personal is subjective and the civilizational is objective. That it is not objective till it's collective in some way. And I see a problem in that. And actually, I realized this when I read about an experiment conducted by an architect and a teacher in Berkeley called Christopher Alexander and his team. And they conduct this experiment where they show people these cards, and each card has 2 images. And they show the same cards to 2 groups who are demographically very similar, except they ask a different question. The first group, they ask them to compare these 2 images on the card and say, which one do you like better? And that's a question to be answered with the head. And there's great subjectivity in the responses. But the second group, with the same cards, they say, which one makes you feel more whole? Which one reflects your inner being more? And when they ask that question, which is an experiential question, not an intellectual question, there is a 90% correlation to one of the images in the pair. There is, they prefer the wooden-handled axe versus the plastic-handled screwdriver, the hand-painted cup versus the mass-produced mug, the street with trees versus the street without trees, even though the street without trees might have some, funkier buildings. So I think we have to sort of shift to learn to trust our bodies and realize that there is actually a far greater objectivity in that. And unfortunately, that's not the way we're schooled. We're schooled to depend on these abstract references because they are objective. But it is not the way you intuitively live, okay? Just imagine, take a thing like friendship. If you sought to find friends by some objective reference, like a philosophy of friendship or a strategy of friendship, you probably wouldn't have any friends. You find friends by just opening yourself up, by listening attentively, by suspending the willing suspension of disbelief. And you find that you start talking to someone, and then you find there's a resonance, and the same things make you laugh, the same things make you cry. And then suddenly one day you are bound strongly by this thing you consider with your core as friendship, but which didn't even exist in your first meeting. And what could be more objective than that? So I think we need to think with our whole body, we need to think with our whole experience. I'm not saying dispel the mind, but don't put all your pegs in the intellect.
Yeah, Anand.
I have one point to add, which is drawing from your question. I think one of the tendencies which comes in the way in our current reality is the tendency to look for the black and the white, and then to say that if I'm picking what comes from the civilizational, it negates the individual, or the other way, when in reality, especially when we speak about the natural symbols, the symbols from the ancient world, it's really meant for the human mind, for the human being who can encompass it complementarily. Rather than this or that, it's this and that. Yes, it's not to be able to hold both and allow both to drive you. Yes, not in a democratic sense that because both exist, I'll give place for both, but to really bring your process into it and be able to draw from all these rivers. Yes, and to put your path, put your independent steps on the path at the center. So I think there's a lot of value to both of these.
Thank you, Anand. Is there a last question we can take? Yeah.
I'm Dhanvantri. I'm a software engineer. And I think any software engineer would attest that, writing a piece of code is actually a set of symbols. And any line of piece of code would have a purpose that comes with a purpose. And the purpose is tested with the test cases and during the testing phase of the development, right? So the symbols basically make up a map, and map is basically the representation of the world. And map is always less than the world. We cannot really write a map which is perfect representative of the world. So and I really loved all the panels, all the members in the panel explained and gave analogy as well as the myths to connect symbols with our lives as well as live practically. But there is a huge disconnect, like especially in the university, many professors are could be anyone, like living in, as I say, ivory tower.
Can you hold the mic closer, maybe? They can't hear you. Can you hold the mic closer?
Okay. Is it okay? So the main criticism against the symbolism is that, like, I feel that it's a classic criticism that like when people, especially in universities and they live in ivory tower and they live in academic world, and that really result into real change in the society. And are there any best practices that government or other civil society organization that they can follow to really make an effect from the symbols that would have a meaningful change in the lives of people?
Let me just summarize. You are asking if symbols have the power to bring about social change, is it?
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking is that symbols basically allows us to create a representation of the world. And as you all explained, the symbols, the various people in the history have used the symbols to make meaning out of the symbols. And ultimately, with especially the constitution, law, and all, they are also you can interpret it as a set of symbols. And so I'm taking it further. The logic I'm trying to take it further is, how can we increase the connection from basically universities or other part of the knowledge where they are all represented in symbols into practical meaning in people's lives?
Yeah.
Let me give you two analogies, one from my profession and one from yours. Starting with my profession, I'm an architect and I sketch with my hand, right? So one is sketching by hand is important because it has muscle memory. Doing everything on the computer, the short repetitive movements of the computer don't breed muscle memory. Moving your hand like that does. But when I sketch, I don't philosophize every line. I sketch and it's just a spontaneous thing. And then I put down my sketch by my pencil and I lean back and say, okay, what have I done? Is it good? Is it bad? And then that intuitive action recedes and the philosophy steps forward. Then I pick up my pencil again and I sketch and the philosophy steps back. Now what am I doing here? I am using the sketch as a symbol to have a conversation with an idea. And what is important is to continue that conversation. There's no ultimate point of, epiphany that there's a final resting point. It's just the joy of sketching, and that conversation, the rapture of being alive, as I said. So it's not that, I can crack the symbols or I should reject symbols or whatever. There's no answer like that. It's just to engage in the conversation with them. And in that, you have to keep in mind something that a software engineer, we were designing a building for a software company, and one of the senior managers said, there is a concept that is there in art, which is also there in writing code, which is elegance. And he says very few software engineers have that capacity. And to do the maximum with the minimum number of lines of code is an elegance, and it's very hard to teach it. And that elegance actually has utility because it reduces the complexity when you combine various modules of code together into a program. So that's part, and in fact, he went on to say that is why PhDs in computer science never join the software industry. Because everything happens too fast and is too transactional to pursue this quest for elegance. So I think it's also this realization that there is something there and there is a truth in that, and it's very hard to pin down and define, but you pursue it, and you pursue this elegance and you pursue it through the rigor of and the continuity of your conversation with symbols.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've run out of time. It would have been lovely to take this conversation forward. I'd just like to thank each of our panelists for being so generous with their time and sharing such wonderful ideas.
I just want to end with a Rumi quote again. It's just one line, okay? Just to ponder on, and kind of addresses a lot of questions. The path appears as you begin to walk. So as you walk, the path appears. What's important is take charge, start walking. Yeah.
Thank you. And I hope the symbols help you see clearer. With that, thank you so much. Thank you for being here and being such a wonderful audience. Thank you.